Welcome back to my channel, you wiggly sausages. It is finally October! And if you're an artist, you know what this means. No, it's not Inktober. If you've watched my massive sketchbook tour video, you already know that I suck at these challenges. So, I decided to create one of my own, which I've been working on every day for the past few weeks, and it is very likely that it's going to keep me occupied for the rest of the month as well. But enough of that. Today, I wanted to take some time to share with y'all my full drawing process from start to finish. I'm going to be working on a fan art for the challenge I was talking about. A little disclaimer, I'm going to use mainly Procreate for 99% of the process, but I'm not going to explain what each tool does, as I've already made a beginner-friendly tutorial for that. So, if you have absolutely no idea how to move around in Procreate, I recommend checking that video out first, and then come to this one later. I think I've said what I had to say, so let's just get started. First things first, it's time to look for some references. I've always had this really bad habit of not looking for enough references, which led me to an insanely slow sketching process. So, what I do now is create a new board for every project I make and save all the references I think I might need for it. I'm usually looking for similar poses from different angles, color palettes, facial expressions, and possible outfits. For this specific work, I had to draw Frieza, so I tried to look for references that would showcase his whole figure and allow me to see his front and back view. Once I have all the references, I would download the ones that I believe would be more useful and proceed with the sketching phase. The size of the canvas I'm going to use is 4320 x 5400. I like to work with big canvases, but I'm also someone who uses a lot of layers, so I kind of have to adjust my drawing process a little bit when I draw on Procreate, as I don't get infinite amount of layers at my disposal. I sketch in black, but sometimes I would use red to distinguish the sketch from the line art, as some illustrations tend to be very complex and my eyes would just start struggling. But this fan art has barely any details, so it's fine. On Procreate, I use this sketch round brush from Jinx Sketch for both my sketch and the line art. I tried to import my custom brushes that I would use on Photoshop, but they don't work that well, and I couldn't be bothered to figure out why, so yeah, we're just using this one. Once I get a reference on the side, I start by sketching a very rough and low detailed pose of the character. I just want to get the general proportions and angle correctly. This is the perfect time for me to figure out the composition and balance of the illustration. Once I'm satisfied, I would add another layer and start the more detailed sketch. If you're someone that takes commissions, like me, what I would usually do is send a sketch for the client to review that is a little bit of an in-between of these two sketching phases I've mentioned. This way, if there is something wrong with the pose or proportions of the character, it could be changed very easily and quickly. Once I'm fully satisfied with the sketch, I would export it to share it as a work in progress over on my Instagram stories. Now it's time to get into my absolute favorite part of the whole drawing process, adding the line art. I think I should have mentioned that this is not a tutorial on how to draw, but more so a walkthrough on how I make my illustrations in my own style, which has been described by some of y'all as a high quality cartoon or a cartoon style with a touch of manga. Line art for me is everything. It's the most relaxing phase of the whole process. One might say that I could save a lot of time by simply cleaning the sketch or not adding the line art at all. Both very true statements, but it would absolutely remove all the fun for me. I would usually ink everything in black, and then later on, after adding the base color, I would change the colors of all the inner lines to a darker shade of the base color they're on. I don't know if anything of what I said made any sense, and I don't even know if I ended up doing this for this illustration. Maybe not. Probably not. Listen, I'm in a rush. Daily. It's painful. Moving on to the coloring phase. First of all, I'll establish and put down the base colors, always under the line art layers. Each color is going to have its own layer, as it makes it easier for me to add gradients, shadows, and highlights to it later on. I didn't do this for Frieza, but usually for any humanoid character, I would add a subtle blush effect around the cheeks, the top of the ears, the middle part of the fingers, the elbows, and the knees. Since I'm using Procreate, I don't have many layers available, as I've already mentioned. So, after I'm done with the base colors and gradients, I will group up both the line art layers and the color layers, duplicate everything, just so I have a backup, and flatten everything up into one single layer. To add the shadows, I'll apply a clipping mask above said layer and turn the mode into multiplier. No, wait. Multiplier. I don't even remember. I think it's multiply. Anyways, if I had infinite amounts of layers available, I would actually create a clipping mask for every base color and use the same color with the multiply mode to create the shadows. But since I'm doing all that at once here, I'll pick either a warm or cool gray color to create the shadows. I would usually have two shadow layers. The first one is going to show where the light is coming from, while the second one is going to create more depth and give shape to all those features that are now covered by the first shadow. I don't usually like to add many highlights, especially to the skin, so I keep them to a bare minimum. To add them, I'll create a new clipping mask on top of everything and turn the mode to either screen, light, or overlay, and choose a color depending on the surrounding and mood of the drawing. Once everything is done here, I'll export the drawing as either a JPEG or PNG file and transfer it to my PC, where it's gonna go through a glow up process. So I'll import it into Photoshop and use something called Camera Raw Filter. This allows me to change a ton of values of the illustration. I could technically do this on Procreate too, but I find that Photoshop has way more specific tools that really help during this process. After that, I might use the Liquify tool, depending on whether something is still off or not. Can't forget to add the signature. And then, this is optional, but if I'm feeling fancy, I'll play around with the color lookup modes, which essentially can change the whole vibe/mood of your drawing. I rarely use them, but they're fun to play around with. And that's about it. I'll export the final result as a JPEG file for Instagram and my portfolio, and as a PNG file for my print shop, which you should totally check out, by the way, if you want to get some cool posters and prints. Link is in the description. That's it for this video. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I'll answer them as best as I can. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. Stay safe